I don't usually do this, and it's more or less on topic, but I wanted to share a top of mind. I've been sitting around with a short cast around my hand for the last month, feeling sorry for myself, as if I haven't had enough injuries to worry about. But, well, I recently saw Cody Howard posted a new video to YouTube. I interviewed Cody sometime back. Check out episode 22 if you haven't already. But Cody used to put out some crazy Class 5 videos under the production name Huckin' Huge. He had a serious life-changing freak snowmobiling accident several years ago, and he had to change his definition of adventure quite a bit. But what I found myself admiring is that he hasn't given up on adventure despite some major obstacles. He's used his same work ethic, determination, and ingenuity to redefine the adventures. And it was also awesome to see him wielding the camera again to share his adventures. And he did this anniversary trip from his accident where he took 8 days solo fishing along the coast of Baja. And I'll link the video in the show notes in case you want to check it out. But man, I find it inspiring to see Cody keep going, and it makes me inspired to keep going. And so if you're listening, Cody, hope to see more videos in the future. Thanks for putting it out. But today I have an awesome guest who's not only amazingly accomplished and has some rad stories to share, but also is just downright friendly and super fun to talk with. And I think you'll have a good time listening. But you know the drill. First, a word from the sponsors. First up is Four Corners Riversports. You know, if you walk into the shop, they're having a bunch of fun, so you should too. Four Corners Riversports is located in Durango, Colorado. They're a full-service paddle sports retail and rental store. If you're looking to get on the water, look no further than Four Corners Riversports. Call them at 970-259-3893 or visit their website, www.riversports.com. This episode is also sponsored by Taylor Barker with the group real estate Steamboat. I've known and paddled with Taylor for years, and he brings passion to everything he does. Steamboat Springs is a wonderful town with the Yampa River running right through it and has a vibrant and friendly boating community. If you're thinking of making a move to the Steamboat area or purchasing a vacation home, be sure to get in touch with Taylor. He's happy to give you a lay of the land, the real estate market, and to help find the perfect property for you. You can reach him at 336-314-4353 or by email at taylor@brokerintheboat.com. You can find those links in the show notes. This podcast is being featured on paddlinglife.com. Paddlinglife.com does a wonderful job of finding all the most interesting happenings in the world of paddling and bringing them straight to you in the form of news, interviews, articles, videos, and more. Check out paddlinglife.com. And now, on to the show. All right. Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Crips, a whitewater storytelling podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Cripps. And as I was thinking about how to introduce my guest today, I found myself a little embarrassed that I don't have as good of an introduction as I should. This is partially because we arranged this interview at the last minute and my day job was keeping me busy, but also my guest's peak years of boating were around the time that I was getting involved in kayaking, and perhaps I wasn't as plugged in as I could have been to everything going on at the time. But what strikes me on a personal basis is the way in which so many accomplished Class 5 kayakers that I know react to him with such warmth and reverence. I've driven up to the Gore parking lot and had my friends say, "Oh, wow, that guy was one of my heroes when I was learning to kayak." I've noticed that people go out of their way for a chance to share a lap on the river with them, to share a drink, or just say hello in an eddy. I recall going on my first multi-day kayaking trip, and my friends who were there with me were always throwing out these quotes from my guests, like how to prepare your food by bringing all the food you need and then shoving as many granola bars as possible in your pockets. I remember sitting around a fire with Andy Blakesley, who is someone that I always admired for his boating abilities. I was trying to build my own skills, and Andy was talking about how he spent time learning to make great campfire meals for the explicit purpose of bribing his way on more trips with my guest's crew as he was trying to learn from them. I remember a guy named Christian Cook that most people won't know, but he came to Colorado young and skilled and full of ambition, and he would constantly be sharing things that he'd learned from my guests. But if you want the standard intro, I'd talk about my guest's long history of accomplishments on the Green River Narrows race, I talk about his role in LVM videos throughout the early 2000s. I talk about how he pushed the boundaries of what I would call class 5 athleticism, turning complex, remote, and challenging multi-day runs into single-day runs. I talk about how he pushed the realm of expedition boating, exploring new places and new ways of doing them. And I talk about how as he moved into a phase of life where he was no longer pushing the boundaries of kayaking, he continues to be instrumental in driving the sport forward through his own family, local organizations, and the kayaking camp that he started and runs. So with that inadequate introduction, let me welcome Tommy Hilleke to the show. Welcome, Tommy.
Thanks, Kevin. That was, well, I would say more than adequate. That was a proper, more than proper glazing is what the kids would call it.
Nice.
Cool.
I'm glad I did something there. Man, so we've had we just went over an outline and we were like, oh man, we've got way more topics than time to actually talk about them. So let's kind of get into it right off the bat here. And I think it's interesting for me personally, so I think it'll be interesting to other people as well, because we talked a little bit like a year ago when we were talking about doing this podcast, but I don't know a lot of the details of like how you got into kayaking and who your mentors were and how you kind of grew into it. So maybe we could just start there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite the journey. I would say like many circles, not one full circle, but several circles. But yeah, my early days, like I grew up in Alabama and just spent a lot of time on like big flat water on the Warrior River. Oddly enough, downstream of some of the best whitewater on the Locust Fork and the Mulberry Fork of the Warrior. But downstream of the whitewater is where I like grew up. And then one of my good friends that I went to high school with was taking a class at UAB, and it was just like a kayaking class, kind of like an adjunct or something. I don't know. It wasn't like part of the school, but it was like a club or something. So, and I just like randomly went with him one day and learned how to roll in the pool that night. And I was like, oh, that was pretty cool. And so kind of like that was like my first real experience in the kayak and in a whitewater kayak. And then we went up to the Ocoee, like kind of around that same time period on a raft trip. And our guide, a guy named Sal DeGennaro, was super cool. And he was like, you guys should come up and be raft guides. And at that time in my life, I was working construction in the summers in Alabama for one of my buddy's dads. And the raft guiding just seemed quite a bit more appealing than that.
Yeah. Easy to beat that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started, went, that would be like summer 95, was my first, or no, like 95, 96. Yeah. 96 Olympics is when it was. I remember that pretty clearly because they had the Olympics on the Ocoee and that was my first year up there. And, so anyway, I just started paddling then and just the bug bit me hard. And, you know, we would go every day after trips and then, we'd go when the river was off, we'd go up to a flipper and, you know, do enders and whatever, anything cool when the low water flipper. And that was like a great summer. And then it was on. And so I like paddled more and more, kind of with a couple of people in the Birmingham Canoe Club. This old lady named Marcia Gunner owned a boat shop. Sorry, Daniel's out there cooking burgers. I'll go back to it. She owned a boat shop, in Birmingham. And I started working for her after the rafting season. And that, like kind of fall, winter, we got a couple of videos in the store. One of them was Green Summer. And I saw, you know, Shane and Woody and all this crew running the Gorilla. And I was just like, that is the craziest thing I've ever seen kayaked. And nice. Also that year, I believe Good to the Last Drop came out.
Oh, yeah.
And if you haven't seen these movies, I'm pretty sure they're all on YouTube. And Falling Down with so the Good to the Last Drop was Scott Lindgren and the Kerns and the Naps and that whole crew of legends. And then Falling Down was BJ and Clay and Denver McClure. I don't know, like all the, you know, that I would say that was the generation ahead of me that I really like locked in. And I was like, oh, I see that's what you're supposed to do. and
Nice.
and so that I really like kind of started pursuing creek boating pretty hard. Like once I like saw that that's really what kayaking was about.
Yeah.
um, and
You
so
immediately locked into that. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I want to
exactly.
go bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that coincided with me. Like I went to Jefferson State Community College for a year, like kind of through that winter, and then the next year started at Brevard College, which absolute like serendipity. Didn't even realize where the Green River Narrows was, but it,
Oh,
you know,
really?
like 20 miles away. I was like, oh,
Turned out you're right there.
yeah. So then, and that was really kind of just where I really started going hard. Like a lot of our crew that I was raft guiding with, and that led the whole time I was in college. I would go raft guide in the summer, and yeah, hooked up with a bunch of the Chattanooga Team Jib crew.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, and then Chris Harges was another one that really kind of had a big influence on my creek boating, like my style of paddling. I feel like was he was just like not afraid to like go anywhere, and I remember being like, oh, I got to work my way up first. I got to run the Chattooga and the Upper Golly, and then we can run, like all the stair steps. And then he was like, why don't we go to the Russell Fork? And I'm like, all right, that sounds great. And we just started taking things off, and
Did
um,
you did you kind of notice early on that you're like different maybe than the other people that you were coming up with, where it's like everyone else going up to 5 and you were ready to go up to level 10? Or
I don't know about that. I know that like one of one of the early things that I like, I don't know if I heard it from someone or if I just kind of developed my own strategy, but whenever we would go to a river, I would always go with the intention of running every rapid. And if something
really?
happened and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right to run it, I would portage, but I really like just was like, I don't want to portage anything. I'm going to go run everything. If I was going to go run a certain river, I'm like, all right, I'm going to go run the whole thing. And that was like just something that I kind of like adopted. And I don't know if that was good for better or for worse, for sure.
Yeah.
But
Did it
and
get
I
you
think
in any?
I definitely in those early days had some pretty sketchy moments,
Yeah.
figuring some of that out. But yeah, just kind of started wanting to run everything, and then
Did you have that in your life before kayaking? Like, were there sports that you were doing before you discovered kayaking where you were kind of like, nah,
uh,
not afraid to put yourself out there?
I was like rock climbing quite a bit before, as I kind of learned how to kayak as well, and then I don't know, just kind of had I don't know, it's like we can get deep on this like kind of origins of kayaking and like the real drive to like not care, but just kind of had a few girlfriends early on, and I think that probably led to some unsafe kayaking, not as like a level to impress, but as a level of not caring, That was kind
Yeah,
of like a pretty kind of could have been a like dangerous time, but had some near misses here and there. But
yeah.
that was, I would say that kind of was a driver as well. Luckily, I don't know, like when I first started paddling with Jason Hale, I don't know that he really had a slalom background, but he paddled with a bunch of like Danny Inman and some of those like early kind of like his crew was a little bit older than mine and they had more of that slalom background. And he was the one that really kind of got me into like training for kayaking. And, and that was all like still kind of while I was in college and started running around with him. And, and he was also not afraid to run especially the green at high water. We started really pushing that out like ourselves. And I mean, I remember he and I would go there by ourselves, like nobody else on the whole river, which
Oh,
seems like
wow.
a crazy thing to like go to the green at high water and not have anybody there. But it used to happen all the time.
Man. And was
Um,
it I mean, it must have been a little bit more of an elite scene than it is in recent years. I mean, was
yeah,
it still a pretty popular run, or was it just sort of like a small group of people that would go do that?
I would say it was a really small group of people. Especially, I mean, there was definitely kind of like the Brevard crew was like Algie, myself, my poor roommate Jimmy Hopper. I don't know if you ever met Jimmy. He was a
Mm-mm.
Colorado paddler for a while. He lives out in California now, but he had not really kayaked before, and he and I were roommates in college, and I drug him down like everything. Like started just to have. I didn't have a car for a while in college, so he was like my ride. Like, all right, we're gonna go run the, whatever it was. Like, took him down like many things at high water, and especially around like the green, like Big Creek, and I'm trying to think of like North Fork of the French Broad, West Fork of the French Broad, just like kind of fit. And we were like, weren't the first descent, but there was not really, we didn't really have any beta on what was going on in that whole, there was so much more to explore. And so that was a big part of it for me as well, was just pushing that, like, all right, we're going to go in here and who knows what's down here,
Yeah.
pretty minimal
Yeah.
beta. Like Tom Visnius and Woody and Russ Colmar had explored a lot of that stuff, kind of like, actually the guy that was like our director of the wilderness program at Brevard, Clyde Carter, he and Russ Colmar were really good buddies. And so they had explored a lot of that together. So we would get some beta from him, but he was always real encouraging on us figuring it out on our own and wanted us to have those experiences. So a lot of time his beta was pretty cryptic. So, yeah.
It's probably pretty formative for what you're going to get into later.
Yeah, totally. he definitely like laid the groundwork for us to just go kind of haywire for a while there.
Yeah. So when did that's all you kind of talking about, all these local adventures, which I guess there are a lot of in that area.
Yeah.
But, like, when did your world kind of start expanding beyond that?
I'd say like 99 was the year that I met Daniel. And that was my first trip out west. And we went out to Colorado and ran, all the classics, like, but I mean, they're classics now, but at the time it was like Opie Joyful, Vallecito, Big South, like all of those runs were, pretty like cutting edge at the time. Like we were, running at high water and just kind of like a lot of it we figured out on our own. I take that back, actually. Dave Frank gave Jimmy and I a really good tour of Colorado the very first time we were out there.
Nice.
But yeah, then we ended up tying in with Daniel and Charlie Beavers and kind of that Riot Bus crew, and and that was Daniel and I at first, when we first met, I kind of feel like there was some friction because we were like, he was like full Riot Bus, like on that like Conquer the World tour, and I was just like really wanted to kayak. I didn't really care about like the first descent or getting like my name out or anything like that. I was just like wanted to run everything that I could run. And it was that first summer, there was definitely, I remember there was like a little friction there, like a couple of times when we hung out. And then after that summer, we all were back in the Southeast, and he was going to App State. I was back at Brevard my senior year, and we started running the green a lot together. And that just led to, that was like the first year of the Ravens Fork out run. And then we started like running the Toxaway and exploring Joe Cassie and all that stuff. And so that was kind of that winter. That was a pretty crazy winter. We lived in a school bus.
Nice.
With a couple of pit bulls and like
a cold school bus.
And James, yeah. Yeah.
I was telling you before this that you really wanted to spend a little time talking about Daniel De Laverne, because he was kind of I'd heard his name a lot when I was learning to kayak, and he's sort of this mythical figure to me because I don't know a lot about him, but every time, he was one of the founders of LVM, and was obviously like a visionary there, and has, some of those classic quotes about, like, you only get one chance to run a rapid blind, that kind of thing. And everyone I talked to kind of that has some knew him in some capacity was like, this guy was just an amazing character.
Yeah.
But like what, I don't know, like how would you describe his personality? And well, let me tell you one little anecdote I have.
Yeah, go for it.
I was going down the first time I ran South Boulder Creek here, like in
Oh yeah.
Colorado, Upper South Boulder Creek. And
Yep.
I think it was probably Forrest. We were portaging around LZ Falls, which is
Oh
this
yeah.
kind of like thing that basically doesn't look runnable. And Forrest says to me, like, yeah, there's only been 3 guys that have run this. And it's like, and 2 out of the 3 of them aren't alive anymore. And he's like, it's not from kayaking, but it's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
epitomizes kind of the personality they had and how they lived their life. And one of them was Daniel De Laverne, the other one was Charlie Beavers, and
Yeah.
I forget who the other guy was. I should know.
That is a pretty interesting. That's a pretty interesting anecdote for sure. I would say that's how it was. Yeah, he also did not like to portage at all, um, especially in those days, especially like kind of those younger years. He was just like an awesome. He was very much like no bullshit, like call it as he saw it. And he was like super driven, and I like never really understood that. I was like kind of like I definitely was a little more into the lifestyling at that time. We were never at the river early. We were typically at the bar late, and he was like incredibly driven to explore and document. Like he always had the camera like the whole time. Like pretty much I knew him, and I just like look at like social media today, like he would have been so far ahead of like all of that. Like when, Instagram came out and all, I mean, he was just all over that stuff. He was like into podcasts. There's Daniel Delaverne podcasts that were like out. Yeah, yeah, for sure. He was doing podcasts. We did a green race podcast in like, I don't know, 2003, like it's out there somewhere. So he
Yeah,
was
before
definitely
that
like
was
way
even a
ahead
word. That's
as
cool.
far as like the documenting and like trying to like record some of the adventures, content creation. Like he was creating content before that was like a thing.
Hmm.
And then once you got him in the boat, he was just like so smooth. um I would say he was very much influenced by the driftwood style by like Scott Lingren, Willie Kern, like that whole um that's really like go with the flow style, like kind of pick like be part of the river going through things, and which served him really well for like a lot of like the big water that we ran. I don't, like I would always joke that I was a boofer and a skimmer, and he was a drifter and a floater. So was our two. I'd say that was our different styles, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
we
was
had.
just listening to the story of that driftwood thing. That was like when they were, it was like it was like when they went to Spirit Falls for the first time, and they were trying to decide whether to boof the thing or just like
Yeah,
be like the driftwood and just
yeah,
plug it. And
totally.
they decided just to go with the plug and save their backs. And
Yep,
I
hundred
guess that
percent.
name stuck. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Um, Yeah, he was like, I mean, I can't even like I named one of my kids is named after Daniel. He just had such a huge influence on my life.
Yeah, that says
Yeah,
a
he was
lot.
just an awesome character. That was like a pretty crazy like just him, he was always the motivator. He'd be like, dude, we gotta go to this place and run this, and I'm like, all right, man, let's go, let's do it, whatever. I'm in. And so like especially like early on, one of the first trips that I did, like we paddled around, we did Colorado for a couple of summers there, kind of like late 90s, and then early 2000. And then I think it was the year 2000. I'm trying to like it all kind of, that time is like kind of tough to get. I'm pretty sure it was the year 2000. Um, we had been in Colorado, and then I wanted to run the Little White pretty bad. It was like on my radar. So ended up getting up to Hood River, got a job there. I was actually living in an RV with Hale and his girlfriend at the time, Dixie Marie. It was like the 3 of us living in this RV. And there was another like rotating cast of characters, but
That must have been
for the most
interesting.
part, it was the 3 of us like kind of for the summer, and we like planted in Hood River, and I met Fred Coriel up there, and so he and I ran the Little White I think in my journal, it was like 24 times in 20 days.
Oh, wow.
Like
That's amazing.
nobody was there, like not a single person. And, and then, yeah, we like never walked Spirit a single time until I hurt my back at the very end of the
Oh,
20.
wow.
and, and
Did
that was
that,
the first year that they had the Gorge Games. I don't know if you remember the Gorge Games, but that was a series of races on white salmon, and like
uh-huh.
it was a pretty cool event. They had a big cash purse, and a bunch of pro kayakers came up there to that. And Daniel was up there for that, and he and myself and Fred were like hanging out. He's like, "We're gonna go to BC and just run what we can run for a month. You want to come?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." So I bailed out of my job that I got working at the brewery in Hood River, and went up to BC, and that was really where the reality of like expedition kayaking got to me. Like I didn't really have that much of everything was you could like hike out. Something happened, you could hike out. But
Right.
out there, there was like the unrunnable, unportageable, unscoutable was like around every corner, um, and like there were places where if you were going to hike out, you were going to get benighted, and that was just like really where I learned a whole lot. I started carrying a lot more than just my throw rope. I'm like, all right, now I'm going to carry like some matches and whatever, like extra food and maybe a down jacket, and like really just started like taking it a lot more seriously that first year in like 2000.
Did you have to learn that lesson the hard way, or did it become pretty apparent to you when you're sitting
Um,
down in the bottom of a locked in gorge that
yeah,
yeah.
I the one of the funniest ones was we were gonna run this thing called Skookum Creek, which is it's right outside of Squamish, and we had pretty limited beta, um, and we hooked up with a guy Corey Boo. I don't know if you've ever heard of Corey, but he was kind of a Whistler Squamish local, and he still does a lot of kayaking. He's run the Stakina bunch. He's a good dude. But this particular trip, we and Charlie Muncie was also on that trip. And he had planned. We were like, all right, we're gonna hike in. We knew there was this like 50-foot waterfall, um, and we didn't know that much about. That was really about all we knew. We knew there was a 30-footer and a 50-footer, and we didn't know where the put in was, and the takeout was like a bridge that we had driven to. So we like start driving up this BC logging road. We drive up and down for most of the day. And finally, we're like, this seems like the best spot. You could kind of see the river. It was like super far down, like several thousand vertical feet down this like super steep, loose gully. And so we hiked down to the river, and the last, I don't know, several hundred feet, we're like lowering our boats down with ropes and stuff. And then we like drop in, and we're like finally make it to river level. And it's this huge rapid. And, the top looks like maybe you can make it. And then it went off of this like 30-footer. And I'm like, well, maybe this is the first 30-footer. But then it just went into this cave that didn't really look like you could get out of. It was like huge boil, like sucking everything back behind the falls. And I just remember looking at it being like, man, I don't know if this. And then it just kind of kept going around the corner. If you could make that, you couldn't really see what was going on, and it was like locked in, couldn't scout anything below that. So, we like deliberated for a while, and I think it was me and Fred and Corey and Charlie Muncie had hiked in, and he was supposed to find this 50-footer and wanted to take pictures, but we never like saw him. And so we ended up like trying to rope ourselves around it, and that got really sketchy. And then it started, and then all of a sudden it's like kind of getting late, and we're like, well, we're not gonna. Nobody was gonna probe it. Nobody, and so then we ended up like going back out. We got out in the dark, so we didn't fully spend the night in there, but
Yeah, it was getting
after we had
borderline.
like roped our boats up most of the way, Corey was up above us and somehow dropped his boat, and it fell. And I remember Freddie and I could just hear it, cocoon, cocoon, cocoon. And we just like took shelter, and this thing just whizzing right by us. I was like, well, that's gone. And then it ended up like cartwheeling and like getting hooked up on a branch, like in the cockpit rim, but didn't fall in the river. So we were like, well, I guess we better go get it then. So I had to go back down, bring it back up. And I think that's just like, that just like ended the whole adventure of that. Um, and so then the next day, we met up with Charlie and Daniel and Dave Gehringer, a couple other people, and we're like, all right, we don't want to put in here. We're going to go down a little bit lower, and we went down, found a different spot that we could maybe hike in, get to the river, and we started pretty early that day actually, and we go downstream, like put in, and we float around the corner like, I don't know, 20 yards. And I was the last one in the boat. And as I come around the corner, the sun was shining like straight upstream. It was super bright. And I fully did not see the group like eddied out, like hanging onto the bushes. I just kind of saw this like pretty big line. And I see a couple of guys standing on the edge of the, like kind of standing on the lip. And Daniel's like pointing to go left. And I'm like, all right, I'm going left. And then he's like, oh, Eddie left. But then it was too late by the time I like got out. And I was like, oh, I'm committed. And ended up just like rolling right off of this like 50-footer. Like we put it right above it, like no scout, just we could roll off of that thing. Like bit my tongue super bad, but I didn't swim. I made it. And I had one of Daniel's cameras in my boat. And I like got out and looked up at them. And they were just like, ah.
I can't believe you just did that.
Come on down.
Well, you're the ultimate pro on that one.
Yeah, that was a pretty big adventure.
That's intense.
Yeah, that was kind of insane. So it was like pretty loose operation that first trip. But we did do some pretty good work. We ran Rogers Creek. That was one that Daniel was on his radar. Nobody really knew about it. And so we were able to like first ascent that, and there's like a bunch of small ones. We didn't run the Tatlow that trip. But it was like that was like the beginning, of like the expedition paddling for me.
Yeah, very cool. I think I remember like one of the Tommy Hilleke quotes out there is something like all paddling is in preparation for BC. That might have been the trip that formed that.
It was 100% the most intense. Like all of my paddling up to that point in my life had led me to like that point for sure. It was definitely very top of my skills. I think I swam like 2 or 3 times on that trip. But it was definitely it was a growth, and it was also like the springboard, because all that video that we filmed that trip became LVM #1. That was like the first.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So all of that, a lot of that video is it's all in LVM #1, or maybe actually it was like 1 or 2. I think Daniel had kind of done one, but I wasn't really in it. And then that one was after we did that trip, it was like, all right, we had a crew, like everybody that was on that had those experiences with us, like meshed super well. And then it was just like on, I don't know.
Man, this is inspiring me. I've realized I've seen LVM clips here, there, a few videos, but like I've not seen nearly enough of the LVM videos. And someone's telling me you can like buy them off Vimeo for, practically free considering how good they are, and I got to go back and start ticking through those things.
Yeah, some of it's kind of cringy. I was definitely like a lot more of a punk. But it's like how it was. Yeah, it's very raw. Like all of that stuff is just like.
I think that's part of what's awesome about it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally.
Like captures more of the reality and spirit of it all.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment here. As I mentioned at the outset, we had more stories than time, but Tommy had some awesome random stories that we couldn't quite fit in. But here's a crazy one from Ecuador that I will interject here. Apparently there's some great John Gray swim stories as well, but we'll have to leave those on the table for another time, or you'll have to catch them around a campfire. All right, here's Tommy.
Okay. Yeah, this one is kind of a crazy story that happened in Ecuador in 2001. I was down there kayaking, and I had been down there for about a month. And my sister, who is a pretty good kayaker, I'd say she was like solid, like class 4 plus 5 minus paddler at the time, came down to Ecuador and with one of her friends, and we like kind of hooked up and were paddling down in around Baños in Ecuador. And there's a river down there called the Topo, and it's a great
Classic.
run. Do you know the Topo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. I think it's changed. I'm sure it's changed since this happened, but this was so 2001. I had just graduated from college. It was like right before I'd done that one trip to BC. And so I was like kind of like just really like starting to be aware of like needing more swiftwater. Like I hadn't had any formal swiftwater training, now, but now at least I'm carrying like a pin kit and rope and kind of got an idea of like said safety and like watching out. But this after this happened, I was definitely like, okay, I like safety like needs to be more of a priority in my life. So we were on the Topo, and we had gotten up to the put in and put on it. It was kind of high. Like when we put in, I was like, it's a little higher than I'd run it before. But I had run it one time before. And so I was like, I think we'll be all good, And I'm trying to think if there was 7 of us at the time, and we started paddling down, run some rapids. My sister's friend Stacy swam and lost her paddle. And at that time, I didn't have a breakdown. I was using my breakdown at the time because I'd been there for a month and already lost the paddle.
Right.
But I gave her my paddle, and I had a pair of hand paddles, like surf fins is what they were. And so I'm still kind of like leading the group down because I'd run it before, and we get down to this one rapid, and it also like kind of started getting dark. That was the other thing. It was like kind of getting late, and we're like really pushing hard, so we're not scouting that much. I'm just like kind of running beta, and people are getting kind of hammered, and we get to this one rapid, and I'm like, oh, we're pretty close to the takeout, like maybe less than half a mile, and we start running this rapid, and it was like let's say like kind of some broken ledges, boulders, and then it all like funneled to the right up against a wall, and then there was this huge rock that had fallen off the wall and made this crack, like this big cave, where all the water was just kind of jamming into this cave under this big rock, and that was up against the wall, and so you definitely like all the water kind of went that way. So you like worked your way through these ledges back out to the left, and could make it. And I didn't even really see exactly what happened to Katie. I think she like back into her flip. All of a sudden, she just gets pushed over there, and she was following me like right behind me. And I like make it out, and I look back, and she's just like doesn't come around the rock. And I'm like, oh shit! So I like paddle over to the side. Jump out, run upstream, and I'm like looking, but she was on the right. I'd gotten out on the left. This was like before I was like really into rescue stuff. I got on the right. I run upstream, and I'm just like, and don't see anything, like nothing but water like jamming into this crack, and there was like a big tree sticking out of the crack. And I was just like, oh my God. And so I jumped in, like pretty much into the rapid and tried to swim into it, but got stuffed around the corner, didn't make it, flushed downstream a little ways, got out. This Canadian guy that I was with, his name was Sam. And it took a while for all that to transpire, like for me to like get out, run upstream, swim across the river, get flushed down, get out, run back up. Probably took, 10 minutes. And it definitely seemed like 10 minutes.
I'm sure.
And, like no sign of her of any kind. And, at this point, Chris Harges was still in the river. I can't remember. There was a couple of other people that were still in the river, and it was like, now it was like kind of starting to get dark ish. And, they were like, we need to go get some help. So those guys took off. Cool. And, me and this guy, Sam, were climbing up like the backside of this giant rock. And it was like, like super thick jungle. And, all of a sudden he's like, wait. He's like, I can hear. And I'm like, what? I'm like fully crying, and then like having visions of having to like call my parents and tell them that this has gone down, and super dark place. And so him saying he can hear it, I'm just like, what are you talking about? And like, there's this like hole in the ground that's like about like a body width round, and like kind of stick my head down in this, and I can hear her like yelling for help. And
Whoa.
so I'm just like, oh my God. And like, without even thinking, I just like stuff myself down in the hole, and kind of like chimneying down through this crack, and like I can hear, and I'm like yelling at her, but there's definitely also like the roar of the rapid in there. And I
Mm-hmm.
get to this point, like I'm gonna say I'm like 6 or 8 feet like from the surface, and my feet are like not touching anything, like I'm like kind of dangling there, and I just like dropped and landed in the river in this big cave, that was
Oh,
like, super dark, and but I'm like kind of swim around, and I get my feet under me, and I can see light like coming in, like I could see like kind of the profile of this rock like going out, and it was maybe like 20 feet away, and I could see light coming in from underneath the water. So I like kind of swam up to where she was, and I could like breathe as I went under the edge of the rock, and I popped out in this other like smaller room, and
jeez.
there was a tree in there, and Katie had like climbed, like gotten stuffed in there in her boat, swam. Her boat was still in there, and her paddle, and she was like had climbed up on this tree and was like yelling like back upstream, like for somebody to come get her, but you just could like it had gotten dark on us, and we couldn't like see what was going on. And
Right.
so basically, I like come up behind her, and I'm like, "Hey, I got you." She was like, "Oh my God!" And we had definitely like had a good brother sister moment in that cave together.
I'll
And
bet.
then so then we're like, all right, now we got to get out of here. And so we both like kind of climb up on the log, and by that point, um, there was a kid from Ecuador named Omar that was with us, and he had like climbed around the front of the cave where she went in, and he was up there, and we were able to like communicate with him, and he like lowered a rope down, and we like pulled her boat out and climbed out this rope like up this cliff, and then now it's like fully dark on the wrong side of the river. But we were able to like get enough of stuff together that we um, like just kind of got our group together, and
Mm-hmm.
um, we're like, well, this is it. We're here for the night. And but it was so funny in that like dark moment of being like, all right, we just got caught out in the jungle. We're like benighted. Um, we were so stoked that like we were all together. Like didn't really matter that we were gonna have to spend the night out. We got like a little bar of chocolate, and you know peanuts or something, and we hang out for like a couple of hours, and start maybe like getting ready. We're just like hanging out and like big like puppy pile of kayakers on the side of the river, and then all of a sudden there's like hear some voices yelling and some lights, and yeah, and Chris and I can't remember whoever else was with us paddled out, and they ended up like finding some people, and like they're like these guys need help, and they like hiked these uh, just basically like Ecuadorian villagers like up the river to where we were, and then we ended up hiking out with those guys the next day or that night. Yeah, we like got out at like 10:30,
You
11
know,
o'clock or something, but
didn't have to spend the night.
didn't have to spend the night. Yeah,
Wow,
that
that's an
was
epic.
yeah, it was an epic, man. That was like a pretty crazy experience to have with the sister.
I'll bet.
I had to
Talk
ask her
about
about that
family
next time.
bonding.
You guys are running gore together, yeah.
Yeah, you tell that story at Thanksgiving dinners now with the.
Man, I waited like I bet I didn't tell my parents that story for like 5 years.
Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
a smart move.
yeah, that was wild.
Well, I think some of the next things I wanted to talk about are where you start kind of transitioning into not just expedition boating, but like how can we sort of like push the athleticism of the sport and like not just doing the runs, but doing them efficiently, doing them quickly, putting more of them together all in, a short period of time. And so there's like the Seven Rivers expedition, there was the Middle Kings run you did, there was the Stikine run you did. Like like where did you start to see kind of opportunity there, or have ambition to get into that?
Yeah, I think that, let's see, I think it probably initially it started out of racing, because like kind of me and Hale, and actually all like Nate Elliott, like there was like quite a few paddlers in the Southeast that really, and it was like because of the green, there wasn't much slalom background, but it was like creek racing. And so we were pretty into the race, like paddling fast and like doing runs quickly. Um, and then, uh, and then we
Yeah,
took that.
should we divert there? Because I feel like we haven't really talked much about the green race, but I mean, this was like a big part of your life, and it still is. Like
That's
you're
true.
still
That's
safety,
true.
safety
Totally.
coordinator and everything. And I
Yeah.
realized when we were first talking, we were running shuttle on Core and talking about doing the podcast a while back, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it was probably like a major faux pas that I was kind of like joking about the green, and how like I kind of disparage people that are like, I run the green, which to me is like kind of like a sign for like I kind of suck,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
just
Well, I
sort of a joke of mine. But
crazy.
I mean, obviously, I know some of the best paddlers in the world have come out of like training on the green.
No,
But
totally. Well, and that's what it was so wild about it is like it was the flow, the like regular 100% release, like that flow, you could get it so dialed that it was like pretty easy. Like you could definitely take people down there that had no business being down there and they'd have a great time because it was just like paddle to that rock, take a right stroke, plop off of that thing, like the green light without the big three is like pretty mellow, and like at the special, I mean, like it's wild that it's just all a campfire story now, but at that for a long time that's what it was, but it was like it gave people the ability to pass through this like mini wilderness, like taking like the whole craziness of your life and your day, and like running like in between your job, you do it on your lunch break, and just get the lap, and you're
awesome.
like, for however long you're in there, that 45 minutes of being in the Monster Mile, it's like feels very serious. Yeah, it's steep, and you got to be in the right spot, and it wasn't that difficult, but people had epics, people drowned, like it was crazy.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. But at high water, now you talk about somebody running the green at high water. It's a whole different caliber.
I have no doubt about that. Yeah. I have no doubt.
It definitely.
Were you part of the group that started to think about racing this, or how did the like race actually, the idea for the race come about?
So the first race was in '96, and that was the year that I started paddling. So I did not race that year. Chris Harges, like one of my mentors, he had raced that year, and that very first race. And I think from talking to him and Leland, who was like the organizer of the first race, Leland Davis, Shane, like the original 16, it kind of like those guys were kind of had started to run the green with enough regularity that they were like, we could get one after work. They had like first started bringing that speed in there, and they're like, oh, we're gonna get one after work. Oh shit, we're kind of running late. Oh, it's gonna get dark. We got to haul ass. Oh, that hauling ass was kind of fun. So now we're gonna, that's where as I understand it, that's where the initial spur of the green race came from, was kind of the actual racing dark after work.
Yeah, an organic
totally.
racing. Like, we need to do this. And then at some point you started winning these things.
Yeah. My first race was in '97, so it was the second green race I raced, and it was kind of impromptu. I was at Brevard. I had parent weekend, so my parents were in town, and they knew that I was a kayaker, and they had run the Ocoee, and that's kind of where what they thought kayaking was all about. And the race was supposed to happen on a Saturday, but it didn't run. And so, but then it ran on Sunday. So the race was on, and my parents were still there. And I'm like, well, hey, I'm going to do this. I got this little kayak race. I don't know what you guys want to hike in and check out this river that we run.
They get like a heart
Yeah,
checkup from their doctor before they went in there.
it didn't even occur to me that how difficult the hike was for my parents. I mean, they were
Yeah.
quite a bit younger then, but it was still a pretty major undertaking for them to hike in there. And then when they got in there, seeing the river, my dad was like, these kids can't do this. This is way too dangerous. He was not happy at all. He was not stoked about the green race that first year.
I'll
He's like,
bet.
we got to stop this thing. um, but yeah, that was that was my first green race. And then because I think Hale won that year, and he and I were kind of buddies, and so we were like, so I like was like, he can win, I can win. I'm gonna start training, and so he's really started pulling that me into some of like giving me some technique, and we would go and paddle flats together, and get out on the lake and whatever, and took it pretty seriously there for a few years, and not that it's not like I still take it seriously, but like when I was definitely trying to win, it was pretty serious. But yeah, that was kind of, I don't remember. I think my first year that I won was 99, or yeah, I think I won 99, and then Al G won in 2000, and then I was able to like, all right, I can do this like every time. So I like kind of locked in on it after that for a few years, basically until I moved to Colorado in 2005.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Six times? Is that
Yep.
yeah.
But,
That's amazing.
Yeah, we had, but so then so that was like kind of the racing background, and I still love racing. I mean, I've done like Go Joyful Race and Russell Fork and the Great Falls, and I love kayak racing. I haven't made it up to the Little White Race. That wasn't really a thing. But I still I would like to do that some year. It's kind of a tough time of year for me because the kids have a lot of ski competitions and finals and everything usually when that race goes on. But
right,
yeah,
definitely one of the cooler races out there. For sure.
Yeah. But now they're into it too. They've all run the Little White, so I think they'd be into racing as well.
Take the whole family.
Yeah. But
so that was kind of some of the inspiration for like how do we take this sort of speed mentality and apply it to some of these big trips.
Yep. And I remember the first time that I had that idea was after we ran the Middle Kings, and my first run was in 2004. And like it like was a mind blower, being in there. And it was another one that we figured out, like nowadays you go, like, oh, run Middle Kings, let's watch all the lines on YouTube, and like we knew nothing, we got some beta from Scott Lindgren and from the Kerns, and and then we hiked in there. And so we like, I think that's something that I wish there was more of in the world for the newer generations, is just more figuring it out. But that run, we just got done, and this is when you checked your email in a library. So I was like checking my email, and while I was in the library checking my email, I saw this article in Climbing Magazine about Dean Potter, and now he had just done the first ascent of Sierra Torre solo, and he had done it one day by himself, and usually it was like a 3 or 4 day climb.
Yeah,
and I was like, man, that'd be like running the Middle Kings in one day. That'd be the craziest thing ever. And,
really?
And after we did that, like I got in the truck, and me and Charlie Beavers drove from back to Colorado, and he and we were talking about it while we were driving back, and I remember just being like, that would be the craziest thing. And then we sort of, I don't know, I like talked about it with Daniel and Grace a bunch. I kept like, I don't know, I was like, man, I think this would be a really cool thing. And we would do runs, like day runs around, like hard day runs, like the Ravens Fork and Toxway and stuff, and do them, like with some speed, but nothing like the first big one that we did was Cherry Creek, Upper Cherry, and that was kind of like a good test, because people do that in a day like pretty regularly now. But that was the first one we actually like flew out of Asheville landed in Sacramento, ran Upper Cherry, and then flew back the next day. And it was like pretty, like we did it like on a weekend. And
That's
I was
full
like, all
on
right, let's start
target mission. Yeah.
And that was, I don't know, it was like, what year was that? That had to be like 03 ish. Yeah, I think it was 2003 because that was the year we went to like Norway, and we didn't have a lot of time to go to California that year. Oh no, I broke my leg. That's what happened. I went to California and I broke my ankle at Upper Chair. What's the name of that run? South Silver.
Oh no.
Drove across the country, got out of the car. Same day, got there, got out, ran up South Silver at high water, piton my lights out, and then had to fly home like 2 days later because I broke my leg. That was a tough one. But later on, we went back and we ran Upper Cherry in one day. And,
nice. That's cool. I didn't know the like seed for that idea to run the Middle Kings. Kind of cool that it came from climbing. So you started like planting that seed with your crew, and eventually it was just you and Grace that decided to go and do it.
Yeah, that was that was after Daniel passed away when we did it.
Okay.
The three of us had talked about it in Daniel's kind of after I think it was after we did the Stikine together. Because Daniel and Toby were on that Stikine trip that we did the one day.
That's right.
We kind of had our system, we would like run it first, take really good notes, and then go back and just like knock it out. So that was like what we did. So we ran the Stikine over the full 3 days. The first time we actually ended up having kind of an epic and had to hike out of the Stikine, which is like something you don't ever want to do.
No.
The water came up like 6 or 8 feet. I think we put in, God, I don't even know how many cubics. I was like running on CFS at the time. So we put in, it was like 12,000 CFS, and it went up to like, it was kind of like when the Driftwood crew went in there and they rained and came up on those guys. But they were on their second day and they didn't have a choice but to wait because they were like deeper in. We were just in the first night. And so we ended up, I think it came up to like 24,000. And so we hiked out from Site Z, which took 2 days. And then,
was it a sketchy hike out? I mean, we were like in bear country.
There's definitely like a lot of bear like sign, and you're just like walking through willow, like moose willows and swamp and stuff. It was like pretty terrible hike out. But we left our boats at Site Z, and initially there were 7 of us, and we got out and we ended up 4 of us: Daniel, Toby, Grace, and myself. We hired a helicopter, flew back in, dropped ourselves off, and put all the other boats in a sling, and they flew the boats out. And then we paddled down, and it had come down a bit to maybe like 17,000. It was still like pretty high. Like it was definitely like kind of some action. But we ran it, and as that, we took remembered everything, wrote things down, had a plan, and we got done and waited a couple of days. Just like the water kept dropping, and then we were like, all right, I think we could pull this off. And we kind of had it in the back of our minds before we went. I had actually talked to Doug Ammons about it just to see what he bounced it off of him. In August, we were at OR, and I ran into him, and we talked about this to King because I'd been up there the year before, and I was like, man, I think, I don't want to call it the future, I'm like, man, this could be a thing, this is it's a different.
Yeah. What did Doug have to say about it? Was he like,
he was pretty keen on it. Yeah. He was really wanted us to keep it pure as far as having the experience ourselves, but once we were in there and explore it, I think he wanted us to have that full experience of the place. And I think we had that. I think that going in there and the water flashing, and we had a couple swims and the full on epic and hike out, and went back in, all right, with full reverence for the place, we think we can do this. We'd
Right.
had our asses kicked. So,
I mean, it's kind of like what you're talking about with the green and other stuff. I think it's part of what makes racing cool is it's sort of like a place that you can now experience in a different way and react to
yeah,
it differently.
yeah, totally, totally. And
Was I mean, was it pretty smooth sailing when you did that day run through the Steamboat?
it mostly was. We had one little like mini epic at Site Z. So we portage Site Z that time, and when we were like the ferry, have you ever been up there? Do you like
No, I've
okay,
never done.
so when you put in, if you portage Site Z, you put in kind of like 2/3 of the way or three quarters of the way down the rapid in this one eddy, and it's a rowdy eddy. It's like super boily and swirly, and you like peel out, and you're just like in like exploding ocean when you peel out, and you gotta kind of make this move because the water's going up against the wall on the bottom right, and it's like real not a good place, like super hectic. And so you want to get out, get left, stay away from the wall. And I peeled out, made the move across, and I looked back and I saw Grace, and he was like surfing this wave across, and then the wave just picked up and just like turned into a hole, and like I just saw his boat cartwheel, and then I like paddled down and catch the eddy, and I didn't see him anymore. And then out of the back of the eddy that's on the against the right wall where you don't want to be, I see him like roll up on the wall, and he goes off the eddy line, and it was probably like 8-foot drop, and I just remember seeing his kayak, like him going off that eddy line backwards, and then he just like went downtown. Like I didn't see him anymore.
Oh man.
Really after that at all, I don't think. And like I kind of like look. And the other people in the group were already like downstream in a farther eddy. So I ferried across, as best as I can, dealing, and found the first eddy that I could get out on the river right, grabbed my rope, ran upstream, and I actually got to a point where I had to set up like a little rappel to like get down to another like shelf and run upstream some more. And I found Grace. He had pretty much self-rescued. He had swam it up against the wall in this like swirly eddy and gotten himself out and caught his boat and got his boat out. But he had lost his paddle. So luckily I had a breakdown paddle on my boat. So I went back, got the breakdown paddle, brought it back, worked it out. So I wouldn't say it was exactly smooth sailing, but
yeah.
You
made it nonetheless.
Yeah.
Do you think fatigue played a factor in that, or was it just kind of like the luck of the draw on that?
I think it was just luck of the draw. Yeah, I think he just got he got car wheeled in that thing and pushed up against the wall, and then he just couldn't. It was like it's a really hectic place to roll up.
Sounds like it. Have you ever talked to like Anial or Benny Marr about their like 2-in-a-day mission?
I've talked to Anial about the swim at Watson's. I haven't really talked to him about the 2-a-day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
God,
the 2-a-day would just be so much crazy. But the whole like dry bag swimming through Watson's Hole is just like I can't really fathom that.
It's
I would have a really hard time making myself do that. I think.
Oh man. Yeah,
I guess
guts to just
what
be like,
you gonna do, but I would have. I don't know that I might have tried some other things.
I like how he described it as like, well, I could blow up this, little lap bag I have and give me some extra flotation. So I figured that was good. Like, yeah, that's mind blowing.
Yeah. But, yeah, it's a hell of a place. So then after that, we were like, we got back and we were like, all right, we've really tapped into something, this like speed descent thing. We're going to start taking off some more. And, yeah, and that was I don't know what year that was. I think that might have been 2005, and then or 2004, 2005, and then Daniel had his accident and passed away after that, and that was pretty tough. That was like definitely not good for like the whole everything we had going at that time just kind of blew up for a few years. But then after, I don't know, you don't ever like get over that one. You just kind of like learn how to like hold on to it differently, I think. I mean,
Right.
everybody, like, you do this sport long enough, you lose people, and getting back out on the river is like pretty important thing, part of the process. So we kept trying to do trips, and went out to California a couple of times. After that, maybe like, I guess I just went probably like '07. I don't remember what year it was. Like, had to be. I know Daniel passed away in '06, so it had to be like '07. Um, did a Middle Kings run, and I think after that run, I was like, all right, I still want to do this. And then the next year, I think, was the year that we did it with. I went with Grace, and there was a pretty big crew of us that did it in the full 5 day trip, and kind of the same thing. Like on that trip, I was like taking notes because it's just like, especially like on the lower section, there's so much to remember. Um,
Yeah. A lot of it's got to be that, just keeping a mental map in your
yeah,
head
yeah,
so that you don't
exactly.
have to constantly stop, right?
Yeah. Um, and Grace and I like kind of just had it in our minds, and we had a shuttle driver and just kind of went for it like after we got done. But I think it was like we didn't even talk about it until after we were done. We'd said goodbye. The group kind of split up, and I was like, man, like the flow is still good. So we just like went for it. But
I feel like that still holds up as like one of the kind of like most impressive endurance accomplishments in kayaking to pull that off. I mean, this like thing that most people think is an exhausting 5 day trip to pull that off in under 24 hours
yeah,
is it's pretty
yeah,
rad. I mean, I remember, I mean, I listened to that, Ben Luck was on the Hammer Factor to talk about his like 15-hour thing, which is even more mind
oh, it's
blowing. But
mind blowing. Yeah, totally.
yeah, but I thought it was pretty funny that Grace was sort of as if it like wasn't enough of an accomplishment. Grace was like, I don't know, when me and Tommy did it, we were taking naps and stuff
We
along
did
the
take a
way.
nap. Yeah, totally. We did take a nap. Yeah.
Probably pretty smart though.
Yeah,
You
yeah, for
can.
sure. We took it. We brought Subway sandwiches. We like went to Subway in Bishop
Yeah.
and had like a couple of foot longs, and yeah, we just went up there. We drove up, and we were gonna. Our plan was to start at midnight, and we were sleeping at the lake at the trailhead, and these kids showed up in like the middle of the night. Or I guess it was like when the middle of the night it was like 9 o'clock or something, and they're like partying and playing music and being loud, and we're like trying to sleep. And finally, we were both up, and we were like, "Let's just go." And so we hiked in. Jules hiked in with us. He was our shuttle driver, Jules Campbell, and he hiked in with us. And then when we got to the river, we got there, it was still dark, so I think we slept a little bit there. Um, but I remember we didn't have like sleeping bags or anything. I just remember like sleeping in my like dry suit, or I don't think I even did wear dress suit. I was a dry top. But I like woke up, and I could see sun like cracking on like the top of the canyon up there, and I was just like, we have got such a long way to go. I was just like, oh my god, what are we doing? I felt like pretty nauseous at that moment. I remember. Uh, and then we just got up and put in, and then after that it went pretty good, and we did like the first like what I would say like 3 days in like by like 10:30 in the morning, and then I was like, all right,
Wow.
we're gonna make it. Let's just be cool, you know. Um,
Wow. And you're feeling pretty good at that
yeah,
point?
yeah. At that point, I was like,
That
okay,
energy?
it's gonna be all right.
Yeah.
But definitely the initial put in, I was like, holy cow, this is gonna be a long time. You just don't realize how much time you spend scouting and messing around and setting safety. Like when you take all that stuff out and you're just going downstream, you can move really fast.
Yeah. I guess that saves you some energy too, right?
Yeah,
It's a lot
totally.
of
It saves a
energy to
ton of
get out of your
energy, and
boat. And yeah.
yeah, yeah, that was
What I
it.
mean, did you kind of have plotted out like exactly what you were just going to portage and what you were going to run and
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we did
stick
it.
to
We
a
did not
plan?
portage very many things.
Yeah.
I think we pretty much ran everything. The one gorge that has that like that I don't know, like 25-foot waterfall, Raw Dog Falls that Stooksbury and those guys pioneered. Like we never ran that, so we portaged that little section. Um, and then there was something in the bottom nine. There were two portages that I remember. One of them, there was one thing that we portaged that we didn't mean to portage that we should have ran, and then there was another thing that we dropped into and had to get out like in a pretty sketchy spot. But that's pretty smooth.
Yeah. But the plan was basically like, we're just going to do the run like we would normally do the run, and like just run everything that we know how to run. And
yeah, exactly.
Just make it fast and smooth.
Yeah.
And I guess you did. I mean, did you bring any overnight gear? Were you planning on it, or were you just like, let's just keep it super light?
I think I might have like had an extra fleece, but not. Yeah, I don't think we had a stove or anything. Yeah, maybe like a little extra food, but
just your Subway sandwiches.
Subway sandwiches, totally. Like the plan was definitely to make it. Yeah, and then when we hiked out. So the other thing that's crazy about Ben is his 15 hours. He also paddled Garlic Falls, which is another like 8 miles of like, class 4 or 5, and we hiked out at Yucca Point, which is, might be more physically demanding than paddling the other 8 miles. Because I remember when I was hiking up, we were hiking out of there, and I was like, I'm not going to make it. I was like, I would like walk like 10 steps, and then I just like have to stop and sit. I was like super bad cramps in my forearms. And then, I don't know, maybe we were halfway up, but Jules had hiked back out, driven the 8-hour shuttle around, and then had hiked down in there with pizza and beer and met us on the trail. And like halfway up, yeah.
That must have been the best beer you've ever had. Yes. Best beer you ever had.
Yeah, for sure.
Dude, that is amazing.
Yeah, that was still won. I mean, he won for that with that move right there, because I was like, it would never get better than that. But,
dude, what a cool accomplishment.
Yeah, that was a pretty good. That was a good one. And then I don't know. I don't want to say that was like my last hurrah, but that was like definitely. I felt like after that happened. So like, I think that was like 2007, and I already had 2 kids on the ground, and Polly was pregnant with the 3rd.
Oh, you did at that point?
Yeah. So I was kind of.
That's even more amazing.
Yeah, I was kind of like, all right, I don't know. The kayaking, especially like in the early days of being married and having kids, the kayaking didn't go that good with the marriage. There was some struggling.
So you can you can tell me whether this is all BS or not, but I had one of the guys I learned to paddle with. I think it was kind of like a little like brag of his or something. Like I knew your name, but I didn't really.
Yeah.
Like I said at the intro, like I think I wasn't even like that aware of like everybody was things that were going on, but he had some relationship to like he knew someone who was friends with Pauly, and so he would like have this insider scoop on like Tommy Hilleke and blah blah. I think it's like his way of bragging or something. But I remember him telling me that like when you got married and had kids, that like Pauly basically was like, you got to shut down all this risky kayaking. You can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
was that a thing?
I mean, it was kind of like the first year we were married. We had kids pretty quickly after we got married, and the first year was like, all right, pretty much the same. Like we moved to Colorado, which was like kind of a tough blow for me, because just from not having the year-round paddling. But I was like, oh, it's cool. I'll still go on trips, and I definitely did that. Did some pretty good trips after we moved out, but it also got kind of harder, like mentally, have like paddling with like, and it wasn't anything Pauly did. It was definitely like, all right, I got these young kids. I gotta make it home.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah. So, but it definitely, we had like several like discussions about me reining in the risk management of it all. And
because from what I've heard, Pauly's a pretty accomplished kayaker too, right? Like,
yeah, she's a good kayaker, totally. Yeah, I think she's an extremely good kayaker. She doesn't like to be scared, which is kind of. For us, it's like a byproduct of having fun, I think, so there's a hard balance when she and I paddle together, because I'm like, oh, check out this slot over here. And she's like,
Right, right. She has the sensible approach
Yeah,
to
yeah,
food.
exactly. She's considerably smarter than I am. Um,
I mean, before we move on, is there anything about the Seven Rivers expedition that's worth talking about? Because I mean, a lot of when I, yeah, that I
yeah.
know that thing's. I remember seeing some of the media around that at the time, and I know a lot of people that I've talked to. It's like they want to hear more about the Seven Rivers expeditions at
Okay.
the time.
Okay.
They thought
Seven
thing was
Rivers. Yeah,
cool. Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
That was, I'd say pretty easily that was the best kayaking trip of my whole life. I'm pretty sure. I mean,
yeah.
it was just like river to river, all the way, we like had the logistics were covered. It wasn't like, I don't know, there was just no like waiting. We just knew what was going to happen. Like the rivers were coming in, everything was like jiving. The crew, we had like just super awesome crew. Like we just like fully gelled. We had most of us had run everything at least once, so we like knew where we were going, and we were really able to like focus on like running some of the harder things at the time. Um,
Maybe for people that don't know, what was the vision there? What were the Seven Rivers and the time
yeah,
frame?
yeah, totally. The seven rivers, so they're like the seven major drainages in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And yeah, let's see if I can name them. I don't know if I got that.
You didn't know there was going to be a quiz, did you?
The American. Let's try to start on the north. The American, the McCullum, the it's the Kings would be the next, or the Tuolumne. I'm not sure. Like Tuolumne might be farther north, and then the Kings, and then the San Joaquin, and then there's two more. What am I leaving out? Cherry Creek, the Tuolumne, and the Grand Canyon of the Tuolumne. So maybe they counted that one twice. But that was one of the runs. The Cherry Creek and the Grand Canyon of the Tuolumne were both. Um, but I think that's all of them. Yeah. Anyway, it was so we just started out kind of with the, and they're all like High Sierra Class 5 expeditions, pretty much all multi-day. And we'd run each of them over the course of, maybe like 3 or 4 years, various years, but to like link it all up into one big trip, like knowing how the snow was, how things ran off and it just like happened. Like nowadays, like I wonder how many Seven Rivers expeditions have been done since ours. Like how many people have run them all? I know Stewksbury did it, but I'd be interested to see how many groups have gone out there and just ticked them all off in one season. Because it's a lot of Class 5 kayaking, and then still at that time too, it was, even though we had beta on how to run it. I remember when we ran the post pile, we ended up going in there with nobody had done it before. And that's one that's pretty good to have somebody with you.
Yeah, I've
Um,
heard that thing is super burly
yeah,
physically and
we
mentally.
like got into the Crucible, and I mean, we planned on spending the night out there anyway, but I think we kayaked for like 2 hours before we were like got into it, and then the whole rest of the day we spent trying to scout and portage and everything, and then we didn't really have a solution as it was about to get dark, so we all slept on like this like one little flat rock that was like a 10 by 10 at the Broken Arrow Falls or whatever at the top rapid. We all slept like little sausages side by side, which doesn't happen on expeditions now. I feel like everybody goes out and finds their own little camping spot. We were all like one little
Right.
zone. Um, but and then the next morning, the way we finally were able to scout that section was we roped Toby McDermott across this big slab, which was probably like 5'8" rock climbing, to this tree that was growing up out of a pothole. And then once he got into that tree, he climbed the tree to the very top and was able to like, it goes, and
Nice.
that was how we ran the Crucible, like that was pretty
That's
crazy.
cool.
Yeah. But
Yeah, kind of back to what you were saying, right? Like it's such a different approach to running a river when you don't know it and you just have to figure it out yourself versus just following a helmet and saying like left here, right here.
yeah, totally. And just being able to like go in YouTube, like, how do you run the Crucible now? Or, like, what is
Right. Which I
nine
guess is
Kings?
hard to resist, I suppose, when you have this great information at your
Yeah,
fingertips and
yeah.
you know you're about to go into something scary, but it changes your interaction with the expedition, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I guess people are still figuring it out, like Dane and like Adrian Mattern and Bren was into it, and those guys like going to the Indus and there's still people out there that are doing it. It's just like back then it was like right here, it was so easy. Now you got to go to
Right.
Pakistan or
Yeah.
Madagascar or some crazy
It's a
place.
little harder,
Yeah,
to find the run that doesn't have
yeah,
the
yeah,
YouTube beta.
yeah. So I don't know. I feel like super fortunate to be part of it at the time that I was a part of it.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
pretty like monumental like time of growth in kayaking in the sport.
yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah, totally.
it's interesting being in a sport that it's still a relatively young sport when you compare it to a lot of the other things out there, skiing, climbing, biking, a lot of these like outdoor sports, right? Like kayaking's pretty young in terms of the growth curve of it, and especially when you were doing it, people were just like figuring out what the limits were.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
they still are. I guess I mean they
Yeah,
still
totally. I
are.
mean,
Like,
I see,
Dane's out there every
stuff
day.
that
Like,
Dale and Dane are doing. I'm like, wow, that's freaking. I mean, I remember like dreaming about kick flips and cobra flips and like those kind of things. Like, what if you could like flip off a waterfall? And we were doing like freewheels and switch freewheels and stuff, but not like off 80 footers. Like that's just wild.
it's amazing. Well,
Yeah,
we're starting to do the transition into fatherhood and kind of like moving out of those years of pushing the limits. And I mean, one of the things I think's been cool about your life is you brought it. I mean, yeah, I guess you still were like took a class 5 approach to parenthood. You had 4 kids. I don't know if you like forgot to go to Planned Parenthood or Polly was like insisting you get a girl out or what,
I'm
but
just
like,
that's super irresponsible. I don't have any excuses. I mean, we did after we had 2 boys. We really wanted to like have it. She wanted a girl pretty bad, so we kind of tried to do that, and it didn't work out. And then she was like, "All right, well, we're done." And I'm like, "Okay, we're done." And she was like, "Well, you need to take care of that." And I was like, "Well, I'm not doing that." And then, and then a couple months later, she was like, "I'm pregnant again," and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna go to mom." I swear,
oh my God.
like, getting so expensive.
I'm sure, but
Yeah,
probably I can't imagine you have any regrets. You've got kind of like an epic family now between the skiing and the kayaking, and your boys
yeah,
are
yeah. No,
pushing a lot of limits in the sport.
totally. I'm super lucky for sure. Um, yeah, the skiing thing is wild. Like I didn't. I mean, I guess it makes sense growing up in Colorado, like for all the boys to love it like they do. But the fact that they all love it like they do, and they all just like push like they do, and like it's crazy. Um, but it's really fun to watch, and I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know which one of your boys it was. Probably the oldest, but it was one of those years that I guess it was at the Gore race, yeah, where it was like the Gore race was canceled. I don't know, a few years back or something, and everyone was hanging out at Tunnel, watching people go down. And man, there was this one guy that was just like doing laps on there and just like kick flipping everything coming into it and like throwing tricks off a tunnel and then just getting worked in tunnel and like throwing a brown claw like while he's getting worked in tunnel. I was just like, who is this guy? And then like one of his friends that was sitting there with him was like, oh yeah, that's Tommy Hilleke's kid. I was
Oh
like,
man,
now I get
yeah,
it.
yeah. That's the other. I mean, that's like the other like funnest thing is that they also love the kayaking, and that's cool because I can still hang with them like we do in the summer. I mean, the Gore laps are like so awesome. It's like so fun for me to be with them and just watch them paddle. But like when we'll run the North Fork like pretty regularly in the summer, and that's still like Jake's is gripping. Like it doesn't matter who you are, or how long you've been kayaking, and just like running the North Fork, like bombing it, with them is just like when I get done with that, I'm like buzzing. Like I'm like more than being concerned about my own line. Like they're like worried about them having their own good line and just having that faith that they are good enough to be able to do it and they're going to work it out.
Yeah.
it's the
How
next
do
level
you
for me. Yeah, it's
how
totally.
do you approach that with them? Are you ever like your dad walking into the green and being like, "You guys shouldn't be doing this"?
I don't know that I've ever. Maybe I did tell them. I think the first time, like they ran the green, like old green. I took the whole family down there when they were pretty young. Like I don't really know. Like Bodie was maybe like 8 or 9. Um, Paddling the Remix 47. Dax was probably like 10 or 11, and they, they like ran the green light. It was like, okay, we scouted Frankenstein and Zwix and like Portage, did everything, got them down there. And I'm so fortunate that I took them in there and they got to paddle it. Um,
Yeah. Before
but then,
change.
but I definitely remember, like Kelly and Daniel, like, looking at Gorilla and wanting to run it and being like, oh man, today's not the day or whatever. And then sure enough, like they were able to come back and race a couple years later. And so that was pretty cool. We ran the green together a bunch. For
That's
two
cool.
years, they both raced. So that was pretty awesome. Um, Having that experience with them. Yeah. Um, Try to think of one, like the very last year of the green race. Um, there was this really mean chalk rock that had fallen into go left and was causing all these pins. I don't know if you remember that, but it was,
I heard about that.
it
Hmm.
was pretty nasty. And one morning we were running in there, and like I made those boys work. Like I brought them down there. We were like setting up the finish line gates and the start anchor, or like the safety anchors, and like pulling cable for Grace for the live stream. And like, so we would like go in there and like get a lap early and then like hike back in and whatever. So it was like super early in the morning. We were paddling down, and Daniel was right behind me and he pinned in go left, like that nasty pin. And, like for me, like as dad, I was just like, oh my God, I got to get him out of there, and I'm like trying to get out and just like knew I was like moving way too slow. And by the time I got out of my boat, did flush out and swam, but his boat stayed in there. And
Hmm.
then, and so I was like, okay, everything's cool. It's all good. Great time, great teachable moment. We're going to go up there. We're going to unpin this boat. I'm going to get to like show these boys how to do it. And, and we get around up there. At old go left, there was like this pretty tall rock where we would set safety on that was kind of right above the drop. And I had, let's see, how do we work that out? Like I had Kelly on live bait, and he like jumps into the pocket of go left where like on top of the boat and clips it. And then, so I was belaying him, and he threw the rope up to Daniel, who was on top of the rock on the main rapid. And and then when Kelly like got off, like Daniel just like gave it a yank, and it just came right off super quick. And he was like, I don't know if he like didn't even have time to like hit belay or whatever, but the rope like got around him, and he just like yanked him off the
Ooh.
rock, and he fell off the top of this rock into the rapid, like right into the part where you were like the dive,
Oh.
go left and dive. That's like where he landed. And that was a
Oh.
like moment where my heart was just like, oh my God, like. And then Kelly immediately, as soon as he fell in, Kelly just dove in after him and grabbed him. And everybody was fine, swam over the shore. But that was just like, as a dad in that moment, and just seeing those boys like react in that situation and have that experience. What that gave, I mean, like, other than bonding them super tight in that moment, I feel like it also showed me that they were on it enough with each other and with just their river awareness, outside of Daniel
Hmm.
getting yanked in, just they were able to like pull it off and get, still got the boat out, got everything together, paddled out, finished
Yeah.
upside of
Yeah.
piece, like pulled the cable, like had the whole day after that whole experience. But that was like one of the more intense like kid paddling experiences. Might have been the most one that I've had actually, but yeah,
Hmm.
there were tears, and not from the kids. So, but
I'm
yeah,
sure. I get it. I
yeah,
get
yeah.
it. Have you How do you feel like your mindset's changed when you paddle today versus when you were back at your peak?
Yeah. I think now that the boys are when the boys are really young, I was definitely like holding back more, and I don't know that I like when I have the opportunity to run something, I like run it, because I'm like, oh, this is my chance to run it. I don't, I still feel like of all the things in my life that I'm like bad at, like I like, I don't know, I screw up a lot of stuff, but I can paddle a kayak still. You know what I'm saying? All right, this is my thing. Like what am I don't know. I like this year ran
Stick
the
to what you're good at.
gorilla at pretty high water. Um,
Nice.
and like didn't like do the like sneaky shelf line. I was like, all right, I'm gonna run the notch line. It didn't really work out that good for me. I kind of got hurt, but I wasn't like gripped about it. I was like, I was like,
Yeah, it
I think
looked
we
pretty.
go.
I think I saw the video that I think there's like didn't Grace put out a little like YouTube thing of sort of. I thought it was actually pretty cool, like doing some analysis of what changed and had
Yeah,
some
yeah,
video of some different lines down Gorilla. If people haven't seen that, they should check it out. It's kind
yeah,
of a
totally.
cool way of seeing what changed there. But you
No,
had a
yeah.
big brace, but pulled it off
Yeah,
like a
exactly. I
champ. It
took
looked
it.
like.
What
Yeah.
cost me was like I didn't have the right angle that I wanted, and I took a like pretty good rib shot from the cockpit rim. A
Uh,
little too flat, but other than that, I was like, all right, I can kayak still. Even after I got hurt, I didn't sell like all my teeth and everything, and I still could kayak. So I was like, all right, I don't know.
and I mean, it sounds like for all the shit you've run, like you haven't had that many injuries, right? You mentioned broken ankle, but
Yeah,
like
yeah, totally.
kept it together pretty well.
Thank
You
you.
must be doing something right.
Definitely. Yeah, a couple stitches here and there, but yeah, I think that cat crash in California was like definitely one of the worst ones.
Hmm. So, wanted to have some time to talk about the Salmon River Adventure Company that you started up, which sounds like just a pretty rad thing that you're offering. And I actually remember talking to you when you had just bought the property, I think, and you were like right before you were about to get it going for the first summer, and you're like, it was like dropping into the biggest class 5 rapid. It sounded like you were like, man,
Totally
I don't
is.
know what I just did. I just threw down a lot of money on this thing, and
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah,
how it's going to work. But
exactly.
yeah,
It's still
share
going.
the
It's a
vision.
very
Share the
continuous class five.
You're still in it.
Still in it. Yeah.
What? Yeah, tell me about it.
Okay,
What was the vision?
it is
How's it going?
awesome. It is definitely kind of I'd say like kind of a dream of ours. Like the idea of it started in Colorado. Like Polly and I were looking for some kind of kayak school rafting operation around here. Like Glenwood specifically is where and then we went down the road with like three different other companies, like kind of intent to purchase, and then we were trying to get like investors and family money and whatever we could pull together to like make some of these purchases, but everything was just like way outside our budget in Colorado, obviously, because most of it like came with some real estate and like it was just like not really working out for us. But during that time, I would say it was when we were raising the kids and we were, I'm not going to say like I'd step back from kayaking, but I wasn't doing as much kayaking for me, and we were doing a lot more family river trips, which I'd never really done before. Like all the river trips I've ever done, if it's like less than like class 4, I've never run it. um, so that was a pretty fun period when the boys were like young and we were like, oh, we're going to the San Juan. We're going to go do Ruby Horse Thief. We were doing the green, and we did all the like the classic desert runs. But we kept going back to the salmon just because I felt like we just always had the best trips up there. Like the water was way warmer. The boys progressed a lot more in their kayaking when we would go to salmon trips. Like,
Makes sense. Deep too. No
yeah,
rocks to
deep
worry about.
and super friendly, and the water's like clear and clean. And so one trip up there, actually, I did not go on the trip. Polly took the boys on the Middle Fork without me. They did a self-support kayak trip. On the Middle Fork, and then when they were leaving, there's a long gravel road. I don't know if you've ever been up to the, like you probably have, but when, for the average listener, if you're coming out of the Middle Fork, you drive down this dirt road for about 2 hours, and probably about the last half hour, you pass this piece of land that's across the river from the road, but it's got some like cabins on it, and there was always a ton of kayaks like laid out there, and I never really knew what was going on there. I thought it was like Tarkio is what I thought. I was like, oh, this is like the base.
Mm.
And, it was like kayak school, but Polly took a picture of the mailbox and looked up the address in the county clerk's office and found out that it was owned by the Boy Scouts of America. Just sent them a letter to see if they would be interested in selling the business or the land or whatever, and turned out that they were. So that's how we found the spot. And since then, we have kind of kept doing what they were doing. We're like doing kayak school. We do a lot more. We do a lot less volume than they did, and we do longer. They were doing like 3 day kind of like I say crash course. They were like bring some of these up, and it was like a pretty loose operation sometimes. But then, but so now we're like, all right, we can run kids camps here that are like really safe, and we can make good progress because it's just like a river trip. It's like every day you wake up. We've got a full commercial kitchen, so we like do all the food there. And, not only do we do kids camps, but the kids camps is kind of where like the initial goal was just for our own kids. And that's like, it just seemed everything that was like what worked the best. But then we also started offering like any kind of kayak instruction. We do like intermediate, beginner, like advanced play boating. And the section of the river that we're on is like the perfect spot for that. Again, because it's like warm and deep and clear, and there's a lot of play spots on that section that if they were in the Southeast or if they were in Colorado or someplace, there'd be a line of people out the door, but they just run. And for as much traffic as that area sees, like nobody kayaks that section. Like they just drive by and look at it on their way to the main. They're like, wow, that looks really fun. And then they go run the main.
Yeah.
Or they come
That's
out
another great thing.
That cool section.
Another great thing about Idaho, huh? It's just not overrun like things get around here sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's wild. So that's going on now. And it's where this will be our 5th year running it. Yep. Fifth year. Last year we bought another company that was just for the permit. It didn't have any like assets of anything except for the permit to run the main salmon. So we started doing main salmon trips, like full 6-day wilderness trips.
Oh, nice.
With that as well. So now we're taking kids. We've had like some kids that are like totally never evers come to camp. They spend a week running the upper section, which is there's like a class 2-3 section, a class 3-4 section. We can do like a little mini 3-day expedition, and we basically teach them. I mean, we pretty much always teach them how to roll. I can't really think of any that like this past year, everybody that came to camp could roll at the end of camp. And then for some of the kids, they stayed another week, and we ran the whole main salmon. They kayaked the whole thing. It was just like Riversports kayak trip. So, and that's
awesome. How many kids do you usually have in a session?
We cap it at 20. So
20.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a pretty good number. We like keep the groups kind of small, and I'd say we have a pretty good method of like breaking them group into kind of like when people show up, you like kind of put like aggressive and less aggressive, and kind of like mix them up a little bit, but also being able to really like tailor to what this group specifically needs and get them on that section until everybody's comfortable, and then move them up to the next section. And then we got maybe a group that's a little more advanced or more aggressive, and they can start out on like the more aggressive section, or maybe they just start on the same section, but they're like, all right, these guys are surfing and stern squirting and, doing like 80 S turns and stuff like that, like right out of the gate. So, I think being able to blend it and then see how at the end of the day, when all the kids get mixed up together again, how they encourage each other. And like some groups are like, I want to move up to the advanced group, and then by the end of the week, everybody, we're all doing it all together, so it's all pretty sweet.
Right.
Yeah.
Man, I think that's to me, it's just so cool that you set this thing up and are doing it. I know, like our Nick Wigston, mutual friend of ours,
Yeah.
he sent his kid there the last few summers, and like it's been a game changer for his kid. He just was like, loves kayaking now. Like his skills have just taken off. And I think, that's been part of the problem with our sport is we just don't have enough of things like this. It's just been like you got to know someone, maybe your parents do it, maybe you get some mentor that you pick up in college, but there aren't these opportunities for just random people to go and learn. And it kind of reminds me of, it's one of the things that still is incredible to me in the sport. Like when I was talking to Aniel, right? Like he was talking about his thing that he set up in Chile where he guides people and gives them instruction. And it's like, what other sport can you take someone who's like at that level and like any random person can go and like learn from them and get instruction from them? And I think it's similar with your camp where it's like the level of instruction that just like any random kid can go and get it's just crazy, like
that's
if you're a snowboarder, you don't go talk to Sean Wyatt and be like, hey man, can I come and like learn a few things at your camp?
Totally. I go to the LeBron James basketball camp.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like, I don't know, man, it just seems like such a cool opportunity, and I'm just pretty psyched that you got that going.
I'm super stoked on it. We're adding another week this year. We've got couple of schools that bring kids up, because that's like the biggest part for us is like trying to get like we all the kids that come is like word of mouth pretty much, like friends of friends, and like so are like trying to tap into other markets. And then like the financial barriers, another thing, we actually started a nonprofit that all it does is basically pay for kids to go to kayak camp, and that we actually started it last winter, but the whole thing with buying the other business, it kind of like got put on the back burner. But we have our like tax ID number. This year we got a lot more donations, so we'll be able to offer a few more kids scholarships. And so that's like a super sweet, like, because I was like, we were just like brainstorming on how to get more kids there, and offer more weeks, because we get some kids that were like, oh, we want to come in, into June, or we're the end of July. And then you only got like, these onesie twosies. So getting them all to come in one group, it only works really if we have a pretty good sized group to get the quality instructors, because they come up and they get stoked when it's like, a full camp and there's a lot going on, and that energy that a group brings versus if it's just like one or two kids, they're a lot less likely to push themselves, I feel like, than once they get in a group like that. So
that makes a lot of sense. What's if someone wants to like try to get involved, either kid or someone, I guess you're doing adult instructions now too, like what's the best way to
so they're the website is salmonwhitewater.com, and that's for like the basic kids camps. And then the nonprofit is called Peak Adventure, and so it's just like peakadventure.com, and that kind of gets it's basically just a donate button. It's just all you're doing is like paying for kids to go to kayak camp, or like try to keep it as simple as possible. So that ends up going to like buy, like it pays Nick to come and go to kayak camp, or come and coach,
a worthy cause,
or buys kayaks or stuff like that. It's just like one way we could figure out to like expand to get more kids to come. That's, I guess.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. And then I'm going to start doing more Swiftwater classes this year, which is pretty sweet. It took us a while to get our permit for that, and which you just got that kind of at the end of last summer. So I'm going to do some work, offer a couple of Swiftwater classes on that section this summer, and see how that goes. So
that's great, because we didn't really talk about that, but I know you've got a lot of background in Swiftwater and some novel ideas about how to handle that. That's
Yeah,
super
yeah. No,
cool.
it's all like
Too.
good old fashioned experience based learning. Yeah,
It's the best way to learn,
totally.
especially in whitewater.
Yeah. But the what else was I going to say about the Salmon River? I don't know. It's awesome. It's just like for me, it's just like a full circle. Like I never really, I'd say Polly was more of the driver to get me back in it, but it brought kayaking back into my life in like a really big and positive way. You know, like it was from such a huge part in my like formative years to really like stepping back and getting. I mean, I like went pretty deep into the skiing world for a couple of years when the boys were young. I was like really like ski mountaineering and climbing peaks and skiing those. Like got pretty into that, and
Hmm.
and now kayaking is just back and doing it with my kids is like so fun. They work there, like the boys are instructors. They all took an ACA class last year, so they're all certified, and they're also like raft guide, and I don't know, just try to teach them to be all around rivermen is pretty important. So yeah,
Super cool. I
yeah,
like the whole kind of a believer in stages of life, and it seems like you've done a good job of that, of like taking advantage of each stage and milking it for all
but
it's worth. So
hopefully
that's
there's
pretty
like more
cool.
stages coming up, but I'm like feel like it's like I don't know. I feel like I'm right now. I'm right where I'm supposed to be in the circle. How's that?
All right, a brief amendum to conclude this episode. Tommy is so chill and so modest, it's easy not to recognize the magnitude of some of these things he's accomplished that were on the cutting edge of the sport at the time and really still hold up today. Also, we glossed over what his boys have accomplished, but for a little taste of it, look up Kelly Hilleke and see what he's been doing on skis, and you'll see that the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree when it comes to athleticism and mental fortitude. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what all his boys accomplish in the coming years. So thanks for listening, and see you on the river.